Ya, bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Nicolás García Huidobro, soy parte del comité editorial de la CFA Society Chile y aquí junto a Natalia Platerotti, que es nuestra directora ejecutiva, y en nombre de CFA Society Chile queríamos darle la bienvenida a este workshop de ética con el doctor McMillan, quien es el director de ética del CFA Institute. Y como siempre agradeciendo el apoyo de nuestros sponsors, HMC Capital, Scotiabank y Moneda Asset Management. Claramente cuando estudiamos el examen del CFA, la sección de ética es probablemente una de las que más nos cuesta avanzar, digamos. Sin embargo, cuando ya estamos en el mundo laboral y en la práctica, las situaciones donde se aplica esta parte ética sucede mucho más seguido de lo que imaginamos. Y muchas de estas situaciones la verdad que las resolvemos de manera automática o sin darle el tiempo a la reflexión necesaria. Y por eso muchas veces no quedan en nuestra memoria. Por eso, como Society, creemos que es importante realizar periódicamente este tipo de workshop, ya que nos permite detenernos un segundo y pensar en estos casos que muchas veces pueden sonar fáciles de resolver, y nos permite analizar los distintos caminos, quizás caminos que no habíamos pensado antes, de cómo podrían irse resolviendo. Y por eso estos workshops del doctor McMillan son muy populares, son importantes para el CFA Institute, lo que se ve reflejado en que entregan estos créditos de Continuing Education, pero también son importantes para diversas instituciones a nivel global. Estos workshops, como los que vamos a ver hoy día, el doctor McMillan los ha presentado en bancos centrales, a entes reguladores, en universidades, etc. Por lo tanto, no es un tema solo de nuestro CFA Institute o CFA Society, sino que es un tema que se ve a nivel de industria en general. Este workshop, la idea es que sea interactivo, o sea, que es ideal que la mayor cantidad de quienes están conectados participen con opiniones, se van a ver casos que están basados en casos reales y con distintas alternativas de resolución, pero una parte importante del valor agregado no es solo la visión que nos da el doctor McMillan, sino también cómo se dan distintas maneras de resolverlo y cómo distintas personas piensan de manera distinta el camino adecuado para resolver estos problemas y que hacen que sean menos simples de lo que creíamos inicialmente. Así que voy a dejar con ustedes a Natalia para que les presente al doctor McMillan. Este workshop va a ser realizado en inglés. Como recomendación, que tengan un navegador ahí abierto al lado, porque básicamente la votación y el desarrollo de los casos se hace a través de una página para ir viendo cómo vamos votando, y es a través de una plataforma interactiva. Así que nuevamente agradecerle a todos su participación y volver a enfatizar la invitación a participar de esto activamente, porque hay harto valor agregado en eso. Pueden hacerlo ya sea obviamente participando con la cámara o con el micrófono, o también haciendo preguntas o comentarios a través del chat, que nosotros se los podemos ir también entregando al doctor McMillan. Y eso lo va a hacer claramente mucho más útil e interesante para todos nosotros. Natalia.
Bueno, gracias Nico. Hola a todos, como Nico dijo, yo soy Natalia Platerotti, directora ejecutiva de CFA Society Chile, and I'm going to switch to English to introduce Dr. Michael McMillan. Dr. Michael McMillan has a PhD in accounting and finance from George Washington University, and MBA from Stanford University, and BA from the University of Pennsylvania. He is a CFA charter holder, a certified compliance and ethics professional, a chartered investment counselor, and a certified public accountant. Dr. McMillan joined CFA Institute in October of 2008, and after more than a decade as a professor of accounting and finance at Johns Hopkins University's Carey School of Business and George Washington University School of Business. Prior to joining CFA Institute, Dr. McMillan served in a variety of volunteer capacities. He was a member of the CFA Council of Examiners for 10 years and a grader for the CFA Level 2 and Level 3 exams for 12 years. In addition, he was the Vice President and Treasurer of the CFA Society of Washington, D.C. As Director, Ethic Education, Dr. McMillan is responsible for creating and developing educational content for CFA Institute members and investment professionals in ethics and professional standards. He's also responsible for providing ethic decision-making workshops to pension plan trustees, investment professionals, regulators, and university students. So, saying that, Dr. Welcome, and thank you very much. You're on mute.
I know. All right. Well, thank you very much, Natalia. We are going to have hopefully an engaging and interactive session today. So everyone be prepared to ask questions and make comments, because what I'm going to do today is place you into some real life ethical dilemmas that investment professionals have told me they have faced. And with most ethical dilemmas, they don't have clear right or wrong answers. So I'm going to put you into the situation, and then I'm going to ask you to vote using your iPad, your cell phone, or your electronic device on what you would do in the situation. After the voting, we're going to talk about the results, and then I'll actually tell you what happened in the real life situation. So here we go. By the way, please feel comfortable either raising your hand or making or recording your comments or questions in the chat box. You can use Spanish, and Natalia or Nicholas will translate for me. My only regret is that I'm not there this year being able to do this in person, because when I was there last June of 2019, I really had an enjoyable time. So hopefully once we get across this pandemic, I can return and do these sessions live. So I'm going to share my screen. And again, at any time, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or just interject. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
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 Okay, good. Here we go. So, you know, I always have to start off with the mission of the CFA Institute. And I do want to say that what we are doing at the Institute and what you all are doing as being CFA charter holders and a member of the CFA Society of Chile is you are placing your highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence for the benefit of society. And what we do, all of us, really does benefit society. So I just want to give you an update on where we are in the Institute in terms of charter holders, members, etc. So right now we have currently almost 179,000 CFA charter holders in 162 markets and 158 CFA societies around the world. Our highest growth area continues to be in the Asia Pacific region, principally China, Hong Kong and Singapore and India are strong growth markets. We still continue to grow in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And of course, the Americas, Latin America, the US, and Canada continues to be our largest market. We are giving all 3 levels of the exam, or we plan to give all 3 levels of the exam in December. And going forward, we are working to convert our level 2 and 3 exams to being online exams, so that you may no longer have to worry about going to a central place and sitting for an exam amongst hundreds or thousands of people. So that's my quick commercial on the CFA Institute and where we are right now. Let's talk about ethics. So this is what we mean by ethical behavior. It's doing the right thing when no one else is watching, even when doing the wrong everything is legal. And this is the constant battle that we always face at CFA Institute or as investment professionals. There's so many activities that we can do that are legal, they just aren't ethical. And one of the reasons why the demand for CFA charter holders globally continues to remain strong is that employers know when they hire charter holders that we can't just do what is legal. We have to live up to a much higher standard. Now that I've told you what ethical behavior is, let me tell you what unethical behavior is. It's knowingly making a decision that harms others or that one feels, believes, or knows to be irresponsible or wrong. So one of the reasons why I like this definition of unethical behavior, because it doesn't point to a rule or anything else. Internally, you know that what you're doing is unethical if you believe that it's going to harm someone else or you believe that it's irresponsible. So this is how we define ethics at the Institute. Ethics begins with education. Well, you certainly get your education by studying for all 3 levels of the CFA program. More importantly, education also includes knowing the laws, rules, and regulations in the jurisdictions in which you're doing business. So ethics has got to begin with education. Equally as important, ethics requires thinking about honesty, integrity, character, and this last one is stewardship. And what I mean by stewardship is it's the careful and responsible management of money that is entrusted to one's care. Think about it. When clients come in to talk to an investment professional, they are relying on us to provide them with a roadmap to help them achieve their goals. They are putting their trust in us, and in return, it is our responsibility to carefully and responsibly manage their money solely in their best interest. Now, here we go. Here's the fun part of the program. I'd like everybody to go to this website, www.slido.com. And the code to join is CFASC, i.e. CFA Society Chile. And by the way, this CFASC is not case sensitive. And Nicholas, I'm just going to check with you. Have you signed on? No problems?
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So, Rodrigo, you have no problem either? You're on mute, by the way.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Good. Thanks for joining today, by the way. All right, here we go. Here's our first case. All right, now, your boss who hired you and has mentored you for the past 3 years is being unfairly let go at the end of the month because of office politics. As the sole support of her family, she is concerned about finding another job. So for the past week, you have observed her making copies of research reports that she wrote, marketing presentations containing her performance record, and spreadsheet models that she created. She then places them in her briefcase before going home. When you ask her why she's doing this, she replies that she will need to show prospective employers examples of her work. What do? A, nothing. B, help her copy the files. C, give her a thumb drive to copy the files onto. Or D, tell her that you will email the files to her after she leaves. All right, everyone, please vote. Remember, your voting is anonymous, so you don't have to worry. Okay. All right. All right. Ooh, I'd love to see how these votes change. Let's see. Let's just polls. All right. We got 17 people. Come on. Well, it looks like we may be stuck at 17. Perhaps it'll take a little while for everybody else to log on. Here's 19. Good. So, let me ask you. Oh, good. I'm glad somebody wants to help her copy the files. That's good. I guess people no longer use thumb drives, so that's not an option. Let me ask you this. People, who's A? 63% of you said A. Why would you do nothing? And by the way, this is a true story, so I'll tell you what happened afterwards. So let me ask one of the 63% of you, why would you do nothing?
So I'm going to start.
Please.
So what I first thought about this is that while you work at a company, the work that you do, it's not your property. I mean, you own what you develop is part of the company's development. So they are the actual quote unquote owners of the work. So I believe that if she has to take the files, she needs authorization from the company, from the higher management, not me. I don't need to help her with that.
So you ask her, she goes, this is what I'm doing, and you would just say, okay, and let her walk out the door.
No, I wouldn't tell her, okay. I would tell her, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do that, but if you get authorization, I can help you.
Okay, but when she says, I'm not asking for your help, I'm copying these files myself. So you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. So
you would just watch her and say, good. If that's too heavy for you, I'll help you carry the files out to your car.
Yeah, that makes it more complicated, actually.
Yes, and you thought ethics was going to be easy, right? All right, so let's go back. Thank you, Nicholas. I really do appreciate your question. Who said that they would email the files to her after she leaves? 32% of you said that. Who wants to volunteer why?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Michael. Regarding the code and standards of the CFA, the idea is that she get permission from her boss in order to fulfill that. I mean, this is duty to employees or employers or something like that. I don't quite remember, but that's the whole idea. So yes. What I think is that, okay, I will email the files to her after she leaves, but in between, I will inform this to her boss or whatever, or her supervisor, if I can do that, if there is any approval available for do that, and then I will email. So I think in the window in between, she leaves and I send her email, I will ask for permission.
Okay, so you would say D as sort of like a stalling tactic until you can find out whether you are authorized to send her that information. Is that
That's right.
kind of what you're saying? Suppose if she says, oh no, that's all right. I've pretty much copied all the information that I need. Thank you very much. And then she leaves. What do you do?
I call security, maybe. I don't know. She's
Well, Alfonso, actually, all of your answers are correct, including Nicholas. But here is the situation. This is the real life situation. Suppose if you're 24, 25 years old. Think about this. This is the boss who hired and mentored you for the past 3 years. You believe that she is being unfairly let go. So one, you owe this person some loyalty. She's mentored you. You also have some sympathy for this individual because you believe she's being unfairly let go. You know she also needs this information to find another job. After all, she's the sole support of her family. Are you really going to call security or go and talk to anybody or anything else? Or are you just going to say, listen, I'm not going to get involved. This does not involve me. If she wants to do it, she can do it. Okay.
okay, but now you gave me some emotional background, which is different. So yeah, I was thinking this is a neutral boss. Yeah, to be honest, I would do nothing if should that be the situation.
Yes, no, and Alfonso, I really appreciate your being honest about that because in the real life situation, this is exactly what happened. This person felt loyalty to this individual. They felt sorry for this individual. They really wanted to help her, you know, find another job. So they felt either I'm going to help her copy the files because they don't really see the ethical issue about it, or in fact, they're just not going to get involved at all. So in the real life situation, this person did help her copy the files, but still felt a little bit uncomfortable about doing it. So eventually the boss leaves, the immediate boss leaves. It still bothers this person, so they went and talked to the boss's boss. And the boss's boss was not happy that they did not say anything when they watched her or observed her taking company property, but they could certainly understand why. So 2 points. One, that both of you mentioned. One, all the work that you do at your company is the property of your company. So in effect, what this individual is doing is stealing company property. That's the first point. The second point is exactly what you said, Alfonso, about this is a violation of CFA Institute standards. And I want to say it's standard 4A, duties to employers. You, as a charter holder, have a duty of loyalty and care. So if you are watching someone steal or do something that's going to damage your employer, you have an obligation to do something about it. So I wouldn't say that you are required to go and say something, but ethically, you really should be according to the standards. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's go to the next one because they're only gonna get harder. I'm gonna do two together this time. All right, so here's our next one. All right. After graduating from business school with a large amount of debt and few job offers, you start a new job as a junior portfolio manager at an investment firm. This morning, your boss asked you to review the files of one of his largest clients who he recently met with before the client left on a 3-month vacation. In conducting your review, you notice that the client inadvertently forgot to sign 2 required discretionary account authorization forms. which will give your boss permission to buy and sell securities in this client's account. When you bring this to the attention of your boss, he quickly signs the client's name on the forms and tells you to put them back in the files. What should you do? A, nothing. B, have the client sign the forms when he returns. C, discard the forms that contain your boss's signature. Or D, replace the two forms that your boss signed with blank ones. Okay, we like this. Okay, now let's think about this, and I'm going to start with C, discard the forms that your boss signed. 50% of you said that. Why is that?
If you want, I can go again.
Yes, go right ahead. Unless anybody else wants, please.
Unless, yeah, I want to give the opportunity to another one, or no? Okay, I will go. So yeah, I selected discard the forms that your boss signed. This is a huge deal. This is illegal. Is using another one's signature. I mean, for me, I think it's quite. It can get you to a lot of problems, both legally in terms of the relationship with the client. Ethically, of course, I think is a huge mistake to let this go. Because you're using the power of another. I mean, you're falsifying the permission, and suppose that is attempting to your client. That is against your company policy. That is something that you shouldn't let go.
Okay, so let me just ask you this. What is going to be the consequence of your doing this? Because I do want you to think about the context in which this is happening. You have graduated from business school, you have a large amount of debt, you have few job offers, and finally you find a job as a junior portfolio manager. If you do nothing, it's fine, right? And I'm not saying this is the right answer. I'm just giving you, listen, you haven't done anything wrong. You know it's a mistake, that was a mistake. So if you say something or replace the blank forms and then someone says, why aren't these forms signed? Who is going to get into trouble? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be your boss, or is it going to be both of you?
Yeah, I mean, me, probably. The problem is that these answers are not black or white. It's actually, they don't address directly what I would do. But in relation to this question, of course, there is a huge trade-off because like in any ethical situation, it's a huge trade-off. If I do this, I may lose my job and I am a junior portfolio manager, etc. I think it's about values as well. I mean, this is different things. If there is nobody harm or whatever, or everybody can go smoothly. Even so, this is about values, about your core values in terms of how you perform.
Are you harming anybody? You're actually not harming anyone. You're helping the client and you're helping your boss.
You are setting a procedure in your company's protocol that could be harmful in the future. There is something that would be, I mean, you have to be the same guy in every situation. in every protocol, because this could go back again and you can face huge problems. And I don't know, actually, I don't know what the client would do after he finds out that it is not his signature. There is huge risk potentially in there.
So let me ask you this. Suppose if you call the client on the phone and you go, client, you forgot to sign these forms. We can't sell securities from your account. And your client says, go ahead, sign the forms using my name, and when I come back from vacation, I'll re-sign the forms. Would you do that?
It's recorded? It's being recorded?
We'll just call you David. David, what would you do?
I don't know. Yeah, I think if I have any like recorded statement from this guy that okay, you can proceed, and I would think twice, but I would my first answer is no.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on this?
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to add that I answered with the option B, have the client sign the forms when he returns.
Okay.
Even though it's definitely a tricky situation to see your boss forging the signature of a client, which reflects on his values. It appears from the context that the boss is not doing this against the will of the client, because they are very close, they just met very recently.
Right. And
it appears to be just a mistake, the fact he forgot to sign these forms.
Mm-hmm.
So without more context of this, I'm not sure if this would answer, but what I would do in this situation is to try to reach out to the client through either email or phone to notify them that he forgot to sign these forms for discretionary account authorization, and try to basically secure of the client that he agrees to authorize the firm for conducting these trades, and that he also commits to sign these forms as soon as possible. And I just wanted to add that in the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, where it's not always possible to physically and is becoming more this type of situation are not as likely to occur in the future. So I think even though we are in a very bad situation, some good things are coming as a result of this.
Okay. All right. This is great. This is very good. This is actually... Yes, please.
I have a question. I also vote for alternative B.
All right.
Because I assume the same thing, that probably the guy had a long relationship with the client, and since the client was living for 3 months, it's very probably to suppose that he told him that please trust, please trade on as you have my permission. But although you can think that there is some breach here, because suppose that that's the real situation.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That was how the things were going on. But after 3 months, the client could come again and not recognize that situation, and say probably that he didn't give the authorization to the other guy to trade.
Right.
And all the losses, for example, that have been made are not a problem of him.
Right. So let me ask you this. So is B the best answer? Do you have an answer E, or is the correct thing to do somewhere between B, C, and D?
I would say that the right alternative is not here.
What is the right alternative?
Probably something like calling the client and make him state and record the statement by phone or something like that.
All right. Suppose if the client is in Africa or is sort of unreachable, or suppose if the client says, sign my signature, and when I get back, I'll sign it again.
Okay. In that case, I would choose B.
Okay, all right. All right, so let me just tell you this. All the comments that you made are right. This is not a very clear situation. There was a case with a charter holder who was in a similar situation. She contacted the client. The client said, sign my name and I will, when I get back or whatever, I'll sign it again. And the boss's boss found out about it, and this person did get in trouble, not only with the regulatory authority, but with CFA Institute as well, because basically what this comes down to is forgery. You are forging and yes, the rationalization is you are helping your client, and your client did tell you to sign it or whatever, but one, doing nothing is not probably appropriate. And two is you really risk losing your job if your boss finds out that you discarded the forms that he signed. So now he's going to get in trouble if he continues to trade thinking that the forms are signed when the forms are not signed. And my question is, and this is what most people think about, they weigh the choices. Should I risk losing my job since I have such a large amount of debt and it may take me a long time to find another job? Or do I just turn away and just allow what I see happening? All right? It is easy. Now, again, all of us are seasoned investment professionals, but sometimes when you're in your 20s or so, you look towards your boss or that authority figure to give you some direction as to what is right or wrong. And that leads me to the point, couple of points I want to bring up right now. The first point is we make most of our decisions instantly and instinctively rather than rationally and using reasons. So we see our boss doing something and we automatically decide, I'm not doing anything, just right off the top of our head. Ethical decisions and ethical behavior are not as reason-based as they may seem. So most of the time we don't sit and weigh the pros and cons. We just decide this is what we're going to do. And then we rationalize or justify our behavior after we've already done it. Third, we tend to believe that we are more ethical than we really are. I got news for you. You know, if I ask you, do you think that you're better drivers than 95% of the people in Santiago? I'm sure you would all raise your hands and say, yes, I'm a better driver. Well, this is how people think about their own ethics as well. And then the last one, which I always talk about, is that we often make unethical decisions, not because we are bad people, but because we're often affected by psychological biases, social and organizational factors, and situational influences. It's these things that come together and affect our decision-making. And this is the point I'm making with the last two cases. The last two cases were, the last case as an example, wasn't that, oh, you saw your boss forge your client's signature, there was a whole context in which that situation occurred. And taking into consideration that whole context would affect or might influence your decision, as opposed to you're just saying, your boss says, oh yeah, I'm going to force this signature, and that's it. So I'll go on. I love this quote. It says, situational influences have more to do with unethical behavior than a person's character. Under the right conditions, good people, and I mean all of us, can be induced, seduced, and initiated to act unethically. So there really is a difference between unethical behavior and unethical people. And I would think that the bosses in both of those situations, the files and the portfolio manager, these bosses aren't really bad people, but they're doing something that's unethical, either to help themselves find another job or to help their clients. That's the situation. I don't believe that these bosses, or even you, the person who observes this, are bad people if you decide to say nothing. All right, so here's the thing about situations. You know, ethical dilemmas often occur because the formal structure of an organization undermines the employee's desire to behave ethically. And what do I mean by formal structures? Monetary and non-monetary awards. If your bonus system or compensation system is purely based upon outcomes, then that may change your view of certain activities because people are motivated by reward systems. Managers have the greatest control over an organization's formal structure and the least control over the internal motivations of employees. You can't force employees to internalize ethical principles. But what you can encourage employees to do is to behave ethically based upon your reward systems, your performance and evaluation systems. How are they evaluated at the end of the year? Do you get a top evaluation because of the returns that you were able to generate in a portfolio? Do you get a top evaluation based upon the number of assets that you're able to bring in? That's how you're evaluated. And also, what degree of autonomy and empowerment do you have within the organization? If you have no control over what's going on and no power to do anything, then you're just going to sit back and let people behave unethically and say, well, I have no choice in the matter. So formal structures within an organization really can affect whether people are behaving ethically or not. So the last two things we talked about was conformity and obedience to authority. These are biases that we often find ourselves subject to. Research has shown that conformity and obedience to authority are context dependent, and that social forces play a much greater role than a person's character in determining their response to ethical dilemmas. So some factors contributing to conformity: the size of the group. Hey, if 20 people are doing all the same thing, we have a tendency to follow what they're doing, as opposed to if the size of the group is only 2 or 3 people. Level of unanimity, meaning that if no one is going to know what you're doing, then you have there's a greater probability that you're going to conform to what everybody else is doing, since you can't be singled out. If the group is very cohesive, you're also going to have a tendency to do what the rest of the group is doing. And we all have this desire to be right and to be liked. And the greater your desire to be liked is, the greater the probability that you are going to conform to what other people are doing. Now, when we talk about obedience to authority, and when we talk about the proximity of the person to the one giving or receiving the orders, if my boss is standing over you, if my boss is standing over me, like face to face, and is saying, do this, do that, I'm gonna do it. As opposed to if I get a call from my boss who's in another building or who's 3 floors down and says, hey, I want you to do this, then there's a greater chance that we won't obey them because they're further away. If the boss is able to use positive language to describe negative behavior, your boss signs that client form and says to you, this is to really help our client. So he's taking forgery and making it look like they're helping a client. And the creation of a verbal or contractual obligation to help. Help me copy the files. You said that you would help me find another job. Well, in order to find another job, I really need you to help me copy these files. Does that make sense to you? I hope so. All right. Yes.
So there's some questions before we move on to, to the next cases. I'm going to start with one question that refers to the previous cases, actually.
Okay.
Rodrigo Bravo is asking, do we consider the ways to talk towards the managers or our boss in order to jointly to reason about the course of action? Rodrigo is there on the camera, so maybe you can complement it.
Yes, my question is about the possibilities to reason together with the bosses or the managers or the bosses, as you said before.
Yeah.
In order to consider another way, another option to consider another course of action about this about these cases.
Okay.
Because I believe that there was a missing option in the previous cases, and it's about to consider and the options to explain or to ask the managers to explain why are they doing this. So that is the main question.
Okay, Rodrigo, I think that's a great thing. So let's go back to the files. And so we ask the boss why she's doing this, and she replies, hey, I need to show my prospective employers examples of my work. So she's clearly explaining to you why she's copying and taking this material with her. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, in order to consider as an employee of the company and not just an employee from my boss, I will consider to make a question to another manager or my boss's boss.
Yes. Okay, but would you feel disloyal? Because remember, this is the boss who hired you and has mentored you don't you feel sorry for this boss? Don't you want to help her find another job? After all, she's the sole support of her family.
Yeah, but I believe that there are other stakeholders in the company who I have to respond. In order to consider my position, the position as an employee of the company, I believe that there are another stakeholders that I have to accept, and then I have to talk with them.
I would agree with you. I would certainly agree with you. And by the fact that you are considering other stakeholders and your role in the broader picture of your employer, I think it's a very good point. But let me ask you, when you were 24 or 25 years old, not that I think you're old right now, but when you were 23 or 24 years old, had you developed that sense of maturity and responsibility to think in that manner?
Yeah. I see your point. Yeah, especially when you feel the eager to increase the responsibility, to grow in the company. So there are many kind of incentives to maybe make a biased decisions.
You know what I'm sorry. You know, when I was in, the first time I was in Chile for CFA Institute, I think it was in 2014. And at that time, there was a big scandal surrounding the department store La Polar. Remember that? Remember La Polar?
Yes.
And La Polar, the trouble was that they had been falsifying their accounts receivable and everything else. So it made them appear that their accounts were less delinquent than they really were. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so here is the whole point about this. They got almost the entire accounts receivable department to participate in changing the delinquencies of all the accounts. And you think, how could these people do this? These are all adults, responsible, etc. And how the situation was framed was they told the people that you were going to help the company by changing the data in these files. It wasn't presented like you're lying or you're conducting a fraud. The situation was, well, you need to change this information because it's going to help the company. And so we can all sit back now and say, oh my goodness, we would never do something like that. But when you're in that situation, and when the situation is framed in that way of helping someone or whatever, it's surprising how we could be induced or seduced to behave unethically. Okay?
Yes.
All right, any other comments? Happy to take them.
There's another question by Gaston. I don't know, Gaston, if you want to ask it, or if not, I'll read it for you.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna put on the camera.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is kind of a spoiler that I would like to ask. Is because what I know about ethics is that there are, well, many kind of lines of thinking, and two of them that I think are most prevalent are the consequentialists and the more like absolute terms or values. For example, in one of the first examples that we saw is more like, okay, should I do the right thing no matter the consequences even for me, or should I consider the consequences?
Yes.
And there are many examples I've seen in the past when I did an MBA. For example, playing poker implies that you're gonna bluff, so it's lying.
Yes.
So in a way, you shouldn't lie. If you take the absolute, let's say, line of thinking or ethics, you shouldn't play poker because it's about lying. But if you're consider that it's part of the rules of the game, then it's okay. On the other hand, there's another example that I saw once. It's about, for example, doing businesses in South America, especially, and considering bribery, for example.
Oh, the mordida. Is that how you say it in Spanish, the mordida?
There's different terms in Chile.
Okay.
Yeah, that's more like Mexican. Yeah. But if it's part of the rules of the game, somebody who's more like consequentialist should even consider bribery, because if it's part of the rules of the game, and if it benefits the company, its employees, maybe it's not that wrong. So my question is, the CFA takes more like a consequentialist approach or more like an absolute approach to the code of ethics? So in this case, for example, forgery is wrong and you shouldn't do it no matter the consequences.
Right, right. That is correct. So we would not be really, I think we would be more, without being technical, sort of deontologists when we just go by the rules. Is that the rule you don't do it, or is that the rule that you do it, regardless of the outcomes or how many people it's going to benefit or not? So I would say the CFA Institute really would look at rules-based. And yes, they understood, you know, in this case about the forgery, this end of CFA charter holder who committed this forgery, although they were sanctioned for doing it, they did not have their charter revoked, or they were censured, which is not a very serious punishment versus revocation or suspension. So you still have to say what you did is wrong. Yes, but I can understand why you did what you did, because your intention was not to harm anybody. Your intention was to help someone. So I think that you can focus upon laws and say, yes, what you did is wrong, but then from a punishment point of view, look towards what people's intentions were when they did it, and then modify the punishment accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah, because just to answer your point, both of those situations did not necessarily harm anyone. Taking the files, yes, it did harm your employer, but it brought no direct harm to any individual. The same way with the portfolio manager, you're actually helping the client, you're not harming the client. And that's really your underlying intent on signing the forms. Okay?
Okay.
All right, good, thanks. Keep those questions and comments going. This is really good. All right, so here's our next situation. And now this gets a little bit harder. So let's go back to the case here. All right, so on your first day as a senior equity analyst at an investment firm, you learn that 5% of their largest fund is invested in Flitter, a social media company. Previously, you were an analyst at a venture capital firm where your last assignment was to analyze Prinder, a private technology company. When you conducted due diligence on Prinder, you learned that it was developing a new technology that will revolutionize social media. You believe that this new technology will have a devastating impact on Flitter when it is released. The analysts on your team at the investment firm are unaware of Prinder and its new technology and believe that Flitter has strong growth potential. What would you do? Would you A, say nothing because you in fact did sign a non-disclosure agreement at the venture capital firm? Would you B, place Flitter on the firm's restricted list? Would you C, encourage the team to sell Flitter without telling them what you know? Or D, would you just tell the analysts everything you know about Prinder? Now, before answering this question, think about this. In this situation, to whom do you owe a duty to? Do you owe a duty to your current employer? Do you owe a duty to the clients of your firm who are invested in Flitter? or do you owe a duty to the venture capital firm, your prior employer? So, give you a chance to think about it and vote. Wow. All right. Come on, 3 more. All right. So, before we go any further, let me just ask, and there is one, what is the ethical issue in this particular case? What is the ethical issue?
Material non-public information.
You are in possession of material non-public information. So I see that 41% of you said say nothing because you signed a non-disclosure agreement at the VC firm. So somebody who said A, please explain your answer.
I can go on this one.
Okay.
Right. So I just choose the A one because I think in the code of ethics says that you have to disassociate in the activities where you can just violate the code. And I think when you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you just can do that. You can comment on that particular company. So you can't encourage your team without telling something because it's like cheating, you know. So I think the ethical choice is just not doing anything. There's a lot of people working there, so they can just figure out for themselves.
Okay, so I like your answer there, but let's take this one step further. So let's suppose you say nothing, and then a week later or 5 days later, Printer comes out with this new technology, and then Flitter's stock price drops drastically. There goes the performance of the fund. There goes perhaps your bonus for the year, and there go your clients are going to be angry because you could have stopped them from losing money. How do you justify that?
Yeah, because if you do something, you take a precedent, and maybe if you see that as a legal or as a ethic choice, maybe you can just find insider information for other companies and telling yourself that you're doing well for your clients. So I think it's not an option. You can't just trade with insider information, because if not, in other cases, you will excuse like this situation.
So you're saying, and I'm sort of kidding now, but you're saying you're putting your duty to yourself above your duty to your clients and your employer.
I think, yeah, it's like, I think you're putting your duty to the law before anything else.
Okay.
Because if you broke that, you can do it on your next company and whatever. So I think you have to yeah, you have to be strict on this one.
All right, I'll take that. Now I'm going to jump down to D, and who said, tell the analyst everything you know about Printer? Who said D? %24 of you.
Hey, I voted for option B to place
Okay.
Flitter on the first expected list.
Okay.
I wasn't sure about this, since my is not man position, so it's very likely do not have the authority to impose a restriction on the coverage of a particular security. However, my understanding of the Code of Ethics states that even though I have material and public information, and if I don't say anything about what I know, but I signal that a specific company, that I may have material and public information on a specific company,
Right.
this might serve as a signal for the rest of my team that they should dump the security. But if I just limit thing that action of material and public company over previous job, and I disclose to them they have I sign an NDA with them, and therefore it will put me in a conflict of interest of covering this company. I think the best course of action is just to at least attempt to do a blackout from the cover company, and well, ideally I would like to stand for the interests of my current clients. And if I have information that this stock may go down, I would urge them to sell. But that would be a misuse of material and public information. So I think that even though I'm not sure if this is, I would call for imposing this on the coverage of.
Okay. Okay, great. Anybody else? And I'm going to tell you what happened in a moment, because this is a true story, and you may be surprised at what happened. Anybody else have any comments that they would like to make?
Michael, can I jump in?
Of course you can.
Yeah. Okay, no. I was thinking if you can see this through the lens of something that you built along your career. Is more like you develop an insight of this company because of mosaic theory or whatever, and you have knowledge for this about this industry or whatever, and this is part of the asset that you are carrying with you. You're carrying with you in another companies.
Yes.
So, if hypothetically you could mimic the process that you did in the former company to analyze, I don't remember the company name.
It's Printer. Yeah.
Hypothetically, okay, I have a non-disclosure agreement, but I do have asset, and this asset, which is the knowledge of the industry on the competitors, and actually I could redevelop this insight by performing the mosaic theory that I did perform in my last company. Can I articulate the situation that way without, I mean, I would do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know if you get it.
No, I understand what you're saying, but you see, the issue here is it's that new technology that Printer has that nobody else knows about. So it's that real piece of information that it's going to be hard to create a mosaic about. You know what I mean? And again, here are all these analysts that on your team, they love Flitter because they are completely unaware of what is going on. So let me tell you what happens. And this is a
question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I have a question. The disclosure agreement is valid only as long as I work there, or is invalid when I move to another company?
No, your disclosure agreement is actually for when you leave the company, the venture capital firm. You can't talk about or disclose any information that you learned while you were working at the venture capital firm. That's what it is.
Okay, I see. Okay, thanks.
So one of the reasons why I was surprised when someone told me about this situation, but here is what actually happened. This individual knew that they were in a very, very difficult situation. So they went and talked to the compliance department. The compliance department went and talked to the legal department. And what they decided to do was to sell 75% of their position in Flitter and keep the remaining 25%, which protected this individual. And again, I'm just telling you what happened, so that if there was a suspicion of them acting on material non-public information, which they did, they would still say, well, we still own a position in it. We were just reducing the large position that we originally had. So that is truly an example of unethical behavior in a firm.
Yes, sorry to come in. I see that that solution maybe solved the problem for the people, but was not the good solution. They ended up trading on non-public information.
That's true. That's true. But and I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but they felt this, and I'm not justifying what they did, but they just felt that they wanted to protect their clients and the performance of the fund, since they knew that this stock would just get hammered, or really the price would decline precipitously if they didn't do something about it. And let me say, there is a bias in the way we think. We have, people in general have an aversion to loss. We feel losses much more painfully than the joy that we get from gains. And so people will do anything to prevent a loss, whereas they're not as motivated to get a gain. And so this is, to me, is the perfect example of loss aversion.
Sorry, Professor McMillan, but what would have been the right thing to do in this? Because I guess probably there's not good or bad, but all of the alternatives do have ethical issues, because not doing something has some implications, doing something also has. And the ideal would have been to erase that information from the person in the case's mind.
Yes. Well, a couple of things. One of the reasons why I like this case is because it truly shows that sometimes we can find ourselves in situations in which there's no easy answer. You're right. Every single one of these alternatives has drawbacks, has problems, but yet we have to do something. I believe that what the company ended up doing was wrong, but I would say probably, I think, I can say right now, oh yeah, you should do A. But again, when you have such a large position in one company, and you know that the stock price of this company is going to get hammered with some bad news, you do feel somewhat obligated to do something, to prevent this from happening. It's like you're driving a car and the car is headed towards a brick wall, and you can either let the car hit the brick wall and hope you're okay, or try and veer to the side,
Yes, but the thing is that when you're driving to the wall, you're looking at the wall. But in this case, you work for a company, and you got information that the wall was there in a way that once you leave the company, you're supposed not to ever have known that information.
Yes, yes, yes. But I do have to tell you, take it the other way around. One of the reasons why, and I'm just going to use this as an example, one of the reasons why hedge funds like to hire people from industry is because they are buying that person's knowledge, that specialized knowledge that they hope this person has that nobody else doesn't. Everybody is always looking for that information edge. So if they believe that you hold specialized information that nobody else has, this company may want to hire you and pay you quite well for that specialized information. Is that correct? No, but these things happen in the real world. And by the way, you would not see this question on the CFA exam. But Maria, you are completely right. You are completely right, as well as everybody else. But again, there's no clear right answer in here, you know, and I definitely think that what the company did wasn't the best thing to do, but that was what they decided at that point in time. So I got one more, if you don't mind. Any other comments? All right, so I love this. It says, run this by the legal department, but run super fast so the ethics department doesn't see it. Right? There's the law, and then there's ethics. The law is the minimum, ethics is much higher. Here's some fundamental ethical principles. Client interests come first. It's important for us to maintain our independence and objectivity. We should always strive to avoid conflicts of interest, but if we can't avoid them, then we need to manage conflicts of interest. And the best way to manage a conflict of interest is through full and fair disclosure, so that our employer or our clients can make an informed decision. In this day of social media, preservation of confidentiality is paramount, is important. We must deal fairly with all of our clients. We can't advantage one group of clients while we disadvantage another group of clients. And when we're conducting analysis or making investment recommendations, it's important that we use reasonable care and prudent judgment. So those are the 7 fundamental principles, and all of those principles are captured in our code of ethics and standards of professional conduct. I also want to say something about the difference between compliance and ethics. You know, since the financial crisis in 2008, every single major financial institution around the world has doubled and tripled the size of their compliance department. But yet, when you pick up the paper every day, you still read about people within institutions doing things that are unethical. So as important as compliance is, something else is needed, and that's ethics. A case in point is, in the paper today, I think it was either today or yesterday, JP Morgan was fined $920 million for market manipulation in the way that they were placing trades for commodities in the market. But $920 million, this is 2020. What they were doing had happened post the financial crisis. So just to say that, well, we have a great compliance system doesn't mean that people are not going to continue to act ethically. What is required is encouraging employees to behave in a way that is consistent with their organization's values and mission. So here's
Dr. McMillan,
Yes.
Just to let you know that we have less than 10 minutes. So
okay, all right. So we're going to do this quickly. Can I do one more and then we'll wind up? All right.
yes, if it's
right,
easy,
so-
yes.
Okay. So here we go. All right. Here we go. So your boss is the managing director of fixed income and is attending an investment conference in New York City. One night, he has dinner with analysts from Glitch, a large credit ratings agency. During the meal, he learns that Glitch is planning a ratings downgrade of APAC Corporation's bonds, and he believes it will have a devastating impact on their price. After the dinner, he has a conference call with you and other portfolio managers at your firm. He tells you what he has learned and instructs everyone to sell APAC bonds from all client portfolios as soon as the market opens. The next morning, APAC bonds are sold from all client portfolios. Afterward, you phone your broker and you tell her to take a short position in APAC stock in your personal portfolio. 2 days later, the ratings downgrade is announced and APAC bonds and its stock decline by 30 and 35% respectively. By selling the APAC bonds, you and your colleagues save the firm's clients millions of dollars. Have you done anything wrong? A, no, you owe a duty to your employer. B, no, you owe a duty to your clients. C, yes, you should have not have sold the APAC bonds from client portfolios. D, yes, you should not have taken a short position in APAC stock. So vote quickly so we can figure this out. Okay. All right, we've got 13. Okay, we got 15. So, all right, anybody want to make a comment about this? Who said B? 33% of you said B. No, you owe a duty to your clients. What is the issue in this case?
That you're trading on non-public material information.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
the issue.
Exactly. So what do you do?
Well, I took the least evil of all the possible answers there, because I also owe a duty to my clients. So even though it's a clear breakage of trading non-public material information, this is the least evil of all, I think, is in terms of benefiting at least your clients.
Okay, so let me get this right. Everybody else in the firm has sold APAC bonds from their clients' portfolios, and you're not going to do it? That's for you to respond.
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
I have not done anything wrong. So because I owe a duty to my clients, that's what I understand from the...
But aren't you acting on material non-public information?
Yes, but I think, as I said, all the answers here, there's not right answer here. So in terms of...
So what would you do? What would you do in this situation?
What would I do? I would... Well, would I do or what I should do? Because
No,
possibly
what
I would just short sell the hell of those bonds. But what I should do is not to trade on that information, definitely.
But all your colleagues are selling the bonds. You're going to be the only one who doesn't?
Well, that's the issue that we discussed initially: consequentialism versus
Yes.
clear.
Listen, if I'm your client and I've lost 35% of my money, I don't really care about consequentialism or utilitarianism. I wanted you to sell those bonds from my portfolio.
But Michael,
That's what I said. I would probably sell the hell of all and short sell them.
I got it.
Michael.
Yes.
If you're in a conference and Glitch is at the conference, couldn't you assume that he's telling this information to everyone?
No, because the wording is one night he has dinner with analysts from this, and so during the meal he kind of learns this. He doesn't know, or the analyst may not know, that he owns APAC bonds, or they could have been lots of good Chilean wine at the dinner and people got a little loose-lipped, you know what I mean?
But it was the analyst's fault, actually, to disclose that.
Okay. So when you're being arrested for material non-public information, you're going to say it's not my fault, it's the analyst's fault.
I get the point. No, I get the point. But I hope on the exam the right answer is right there, so you can pick. Okay, I won't trade and that's it. But I'm guessing it's not going to be like that.
Good, easy.
Okay.
It seems to me, Michael,
yes,
that clearly the D alternative is probably better than the others, because the only thing that you are deciding on non-public material information is that you are going short. But trading for your clients, you are only doing what your boss is telling you to do.
Yes, obedience to authority. So it's okay to break the law if your boss tells you to do so.
But you are not breaking the law.
You are acting on material non-public information. Right? Because nobody else has this information. It says 2 days later, the ratings downgrade is announced. So nobody knows about this but your boss, and your boss communicates that to you. And by the way, just as a quick side note, this is standard 2A, material non-public information. And if your boss was a CFA charter holder, he would be violating standard 4C, responsibilities of supervisors, because they should not be encouraging you to do anything that's going to violate the law or to violate the code and standards. All right? So I'm going to wrap up here and just with these last couple of comments. And I will leave you the entire presentation. But how do you resolve an ethical dilemma? Well, first you need to acknowledge that you're faced with an ethical issue. And oftentimes we may find ourselves in situations and circumstances where the ethical issue is not obvious. We need to determine who's faced with and owns the problem. In the case of the files, that becomes your problem once you see the boss doing something wrong. In both the files and the portfolio manager, once you see that portfolio manager sign or forge the client's signature, their problem becomes your problem. Gather the relevant data. In the case of Flitter and Glitch ratings, we had to figure out, is this material non-public information? And in fact, it was. So then we have to apply the resolution, then we have to, these numbers are a little bit off. Then we have to apply the resolution principles. And that means, am I putting my client interest first? Is this going to affect my independence and objectivity? Am I fully and fairly disclosing everything my client and employer needs to know? When I say test for the wrong versus right parameter, ask yourself, is this legal? Can I do this? Can I not do this? When I say test for the right versus right paradigm, it means ask yourself, is this ethical? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Investigate other options. Let's hope there's an answer E out there, or there may be a way to compromise the situation. Make a decision and then reflect on what you've learned from the decision. Because the thing is, we are never going to make the right decision 100% of the time. Hopefully we make the right decision 60% of the time. But as long as we've thought about what we are doing and why we are doing it, there's always something that we can learn from whatever decision we make. So I'll leave you with this last quote, and it says, the unethical actions of infamous wrongdoers who have recently populated the crime sections of the financial papers do not prove they are evil people. Instead, they illustrate that the circumstances in which we find ourselves often, not always, have more to do with the decisions we make and actions we take than do our basic character traits. So thank you all very much, but before you go, there is a quick survey that you can fill out on your phone. So then tell us what we can do to make this training workshop or whatever better, bigger, and more impactful than hopefully it already was. So I'm gonna, as you fill this out, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'm gonna thank Natalia and Nicholas for organizing this. And Nicholas, you get to have the last. I also wanna also thank two of my colleagues at CFA Institute, Nicole Lee, thanks Nicole, and Rafael Matalana. So Nicholas, it's back to you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. We want to thank everyone for participating in the workshop. We hope you find it useful. Thank you, Dr. McMillan, for all the cases, for all the insights. And next time you can put the right choices in the questions, because there's never the right choice there. We want to thank your team, Nicole, Luis, Rafael, for all the help. And we hope to have you again in a future workshop here in Chile personally next time.
Oh, good, good, good. I'd love to come again, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye.